Welcome to the UK Run Chat podcast. I'm Michelle, and this week I'm joined by James Stirling, who you might know better as London Fitness Guy on socials. Now, James is really passionate about helping beginners build sustainable fitness habits and is currently taking on the SuperHalfs challenge himself, completing 6 iconic half marathons across Europe. So in this episode, we'll be talking about what it really means to be a stronger runner, how you can fit that into your life, and how to crack the half marathon distance, because that's not something we've ever really talked in great detail about on this podcast yet. So, James, welcome to the podcast. Really excited to have you here today with us. How are you?
I'm really good. Thanks so much for having me and looking forward to sharing my SuperHalfs experience and hopefully providing some valuable tips for people to build strength and run faster.
Yeah, brilliant. So just tell us a little bit about the super halves just to start with, because people might not have heard of those before. So there are 6 half marathons across Europe. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, 6 across Europe. It's been amazing. I've done 5, so I've got 1 left in Wales. But they've been brilliant. It's just such an amazing experience to travel and run. And what people maybe don't realize is you see so much of the city by doing it that you basically get a free sightseeing tour at the same time. So it's been really good. And I've got Wales left in October to complete the last one. And at the end of doing the 6, you get a huge medallion style medal, which is great. So I've been running them with Real Buzz for Make-A-Wish charity. So it's also for a great cause. And it's just been such a lovely experience. I'm sad to see them finish.
Yeah, oh, that's lovely. So where has your Super Halves challenge taken you then?
So it's taken me to Lisbon, Copenhagen, Prague, Valencia, Berlin, and then finally Wales.
Wow. So which has been your favourite so far, would you say?
They've all been really unique. I loved Berlin. I think for atmosphere and crowds, Berlin was incredible. But Prague was also one of my favorites just because it's such a beautiful city. And it's quite a tough run because there's a lot of cobbled streets as well. So it's very tough. But it was really good. And the crowds have been amazing in every single one. Even when it's had torrential downpours, like I had in Copenhagen, there's always been a crowd turn up. And it just makes the day so much better.
Yeah. So had you been to these places before, or was it your first time visiting with the half marathons?
I'd been to a few of them before, but I think when you run, you just see cities in such a unique way.
Yeah.
And also because there are so many runners, it feels like a real shared experience. So it's been really amazing. And what's been so incredible is just seeing how running has taken off. It's worldwide. It's, every city has had such a pull. I've met people from the UK on these European ones just when running around, and it's been amazing to meet some of those people as well. But I can't recommend it enough. It's just a really unique experience, and you feel great once you've got them done.
Yeah, and sounds great, like bringing people from all across Europe together as well. I bet that's a really good atmosphere.
Yeah, and obviously when you're on the start line of any half marathon or marathon, it's such a buzz anyway. But when you've just got all these people from different experiences, abilities, backgrounds, it just feels really special, and it's a nice experience to do in a different country.
Yeah. Oh, so Wales kind of nearer to home turf to finish
I like
off
to say
then.
I'm finishing on home turf.
Yeah.
I know Wales is a quite challenging one because there's a lot more hills.
Okay,
It's
yeah, I can
relatively
imagine.
flat, so it's been nice. But I know Wales is the most hilly, so I'm finishing on a hill climb there.
Yeah, oh, that'll be fun and challenging. So when is that happening?
That is in October. So
Yeah.
I've got a bit of time now. Some of them are packed quite tight when you do all 6 of them in the same year. So I've got a little bit of a break, and then my training will kind of ramp up a little bit from next month. So from the end of July, really.
Yeah. So you normally give yourself kind of a good 3 months to get half marathon ready.
Yeah, I mean, I run consistently
Yeah.
anyway, but I kind of tend to stay around the 10K sweet spot for most of the year. And then when I'm training for a half marathon, I'll ramp things up a little bit more. But with work life as well, it just sits really nicely for me to be able to put those runs and that distance of 10K typically into my weekly plan.
Yeah, yeah, you got to do what you enjoy and what fits into life, haven't you?
Exactly, exactly. It's really tough running, strength training, trying to manage work. It's very
Yeah.
tough, and I always take my hat off to people that manage to do it because it's something to be really proud of if you can.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go back to the beginning then before we get into half marathon kind of tips. What first got you into fitness and sport, and helping communities of people get stronger?
Well, I studied sports science at university. To be honest, sport was the one thing I was half good at school, so it tended to be the one thing I showed most interest in. So it led me to do a sports science degree at university. And when I came out of university, I did various jobs from managing leisure contracts to working for Badminton England, the governing body of badminton. And then I went to work for a football club, charitable arm, a football club in the Premier League. And it was working with young people in actually taking them out of gangs and these awful situations they were in, and using sport as a tool and a vehicle to take them into more positive opportunities. And it was an incredible job. But I was PTing on the side, and I was training people and running classes across London. And it just got to a point where I felt like it was now or never. And I gave up a job I absolutely loved to do something else I absolutely loved. So it kind of felt like a win-win. And at that age, I had far less worries in life. So I took the gamble, and I've never really looked back.
Wow, that's a huge gamble to take, actually. So, I mean, because you've got a huge kind of following on Instagram, haven't you? Now, was
Yeah.
that always the goal?
No, not really. I mean, Instagram is obviously huge now, and when I started posting workouts and fitness tips 10 years ago, it was kind of growing, but not quite to the extent it is now. But my passion through social media has always been just to share workout tips, and today it's the one thing I love to share. And I've always had this ethos of wanting to provide people with accessible fitness tips, home workouts, strength workouts they can do with just a set of dumbbells, because I truly believe that you don't need to go to a gym. And if you are prepared to get dumbbells, invest in heavier dumbbells when you build strength, you can continue progressing for life. And it's just about commitment.
Yeah, and it's finding time, isn't it? Like we were saying earlier, because I think what comes across in your videos is here's 20 minutes, here's what you can do to make yourself stronger, because it doesn't need to be a whole hour going to the gym, does it?
No, exactly. And there's so much research now around, how you can effectively strength train in a short time. And research shows that actually you can do 2 sets, providing you take at least one of them to failure to build strength. And I think that's really encouraging for people who struggle to find time to strength train. And it's been really popular across social media. I've got 2 million people across social media now, which is just mind blowing. And time again, the most popular tips I share are strength workouts.
Yeah.
So people are looking for quick, easy workouts they can do that actually are effective and work and backed by science.
Yeah, and it's knowing. I think it's knowing what to do as well, isn't it? There's a lot of information out there that isn't always necessarily the best for us as runners, is there? So it's breaking down that confusion around it, I think.
Definitely. And, it's difficult because a lot of the time, the basics and the boring things that we see are the things that work. And I think that's really hard to get across in a world of social media. You don't need to be doing backflip burpees to get results. It's the simple things of progressive overload. So, lifting heavier when it feels easy, mastering the basics of movement and repetition, and doing the same things week in, week out, but with a focus and intent of building strength.
Yeah, so because I think quite often people aren't patient enough with strength training. Do you see that with beginners that you work with?
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, I think a lot of the difficulty is we second guess ourselves and doubt whether what we're doing is right or whether we're structuring things in the right way. And I feel like a lot of the time we're looking to optimize everything for the perfect plan. And sometimes the perfect workout is just picking up your dumbbells and doing the same thing for 4 weeks and trying to build the dumbbell weight periodically over that 4 week period or 8 week period, however long you give yourself. Um, I think what's quite difficult is if you don't track your weights, you don't track your reps, it's quite hard to see the change. And I think for anyone that's starting strength training, is setting a plan for yourself is really important, because it means that when you go into your workouts, especially if you're time restricted, you don't need to think about how many reps or what weight you were doing last week. You've got it all there for you. And if you see the progress there, it's really motivational.
Yeah. So how would you recommend somebody who's never picked up a set of dumbbells before? Like, where would they start? How do you know what weight to get? And how many exercises do you start with? Just
Yeah,
as
it's
an
a great
example.
question. I mean, I always think the first thing to do is start with your body weight, especially if you've never lifted a weight before. Sometimes dumbbells or barbells can feel really intimidating.
Yeah.
But mastering the movement should always be the first port of call. So how do you squat? Can you do a hinge movement? Can you do a push up? Can you master these basics before you start adding more load to them? Basically adding the dumbbells to them. And once you can master the basics and you get a feel for the movement, and even asking a PT to check for you, once you can grasp those basics, it's just a case of repeating it, but with more load when it feels easy. And I think sometimes we massively overcomplicate it, but the effort level yourself. And again, research shows that if you can take your last set to failure, meaning you can't do another rep, that's the optimal position to be in to build strength and to build muscle. So I think we overcomplicate it, and going back to those basics and those foundations is really important. So that would be the first thing I would look at doing, is mastering movement. And then you can start to get a little bit more creative and add more intensity to your workouts as progression, because that's all we're looking to do, is progress it across weights, across reps, across different styles and patterns of movement, or more sets. It really is as simple as that.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. So how many reps would you start with, for example, of say you find the good weight for you that's challenging? How do you know that's challenging enough for you?
So especially for people that train from home, I always like to look at a 10 rep range.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because, again, going back to research, I always like to bring it back to what studies actually show. But you can build strength and muscle across any rep range. But what you're really trying to make sure you do is work in a rep range that doesn't over fatigue you. So you can build strength at 20 reps, you can build strength at 6 reps. But what people often find is that if they're doing 20 reps consistently, it gets quite boring and it gets quite fatiguing. So I find this 10 rep is a bit of a sweet spot, 8 to 10. And if you can get to a point of 3 sets where the last one feels really challenging and you can't do another rep, that is the sweet spot across every exercise. And if you have 30 minutes, you're looking at 6 exercises, 3 to 4 sets, and that's it.
Yeah, so you don't need much, really, do you?
No, I don't think so at all. And when I structure a workout for myself and for clients, what I typically look to do is start with some plyometric movements to wake up your central nervous system and just get your body fired up for the lifts you're about to do. I then move into my compound lifts, which are the bigger exercises or that recruit more muscles, like the squats and the deadlifts, and then make things a little bit more run specific, or introduce accessory movements, which might even be bicep curls if that's an area you want to improve on. Yeah. And then you finish with some mobility. So that's a 30-minute workout. And for me, that ticks so many boxes and makes strength training so much more accessible to people that are restricted on time.
Yeah, and I think the key is what you said earlier about just repeating the same session kind of for 4-6 weeks.
Absolutely. And I know people might say, well, that's really boring, but it works. And if you're after results and you are after improvements in performance, the boring things tend to work best.
Yeah. So are we just, as runners, should we just be focusing on legs and glutes?
I think it's really interesting because when people get into strength training, myself included, when I started strength training, I typically followed a bodybuilding style of training. So it was a lot of overhead press, it was a lot of chest press and movements like that, which is kind of quite restrictive because you end up just doing a lot of push and pull movements, but you don't really train with much athletic performance in mind. So I kind of switched that focus when I started running to do exercises like plyometrics, because again, there's so much science around how impactful plyometrics are within your training to improve your running economy and essentially, run better.
Yeah.
So there's been a big shift in my own training that I think is really important for anyone who is looking to running. It's not necessarily just training your lower body, because I still think as human beings, we should be able to push and we should be able to pull with strength. But I think it's about making sure that in your plan, you have the right exercises to generate the right response to improve your running. It's a bit like, if you're a swimmer, you'd expect a swimmer to train in the water. Well, you'd expect a runner to still do the right exercises to improve their running.
Yeah. Yeah. So if a runner had time for, say, 2 30-minute strength sessions a week, what would you focus on then? So quite time poor. What's your recommendation?
So even like 2 to 3 strength workouts a week, I always encourage full body.
Yeah.
because when you train full body, you're able to tick off each muscle group twice per week, which again is kind of optimal for strength and muscle and longevity. So I would focus one of those workouts on pull-based movements, including lower body. So movements like squats are included in that because you're pushing away from the floor. And then your second workout, I'd focus more on pull-based movements, including deadlift and hinge for the lower body, because that way you're getting a much more complete program. And again, it's 30 minutes twice a week, which I think balances really nicely in a week of running as well.
Yeah, no, that's really good. So I'm going to put something a bit controversial out here. And that is, I'm coming from a female perspective with society telling us we need to be smaller. A lot of female runners especially worry that lifting weights will make them bulky. So is there any truth in that?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, I've been lifting for 15 years and I'm not bulky.
There we go.
So I'm very sad that I'm not. But really, it's your calories and your food intake that dictates growth. It's actually very hard to build a substantial amount of muscle, especially when you're running, which is generally quite catabolic in terms of exercise. So I think for anyone who is concerned about getting too bulky, I would say don't worry because you're getting strong. And when you build strength, you improve your running economy and holding pace feels easier.
Yeah, so talk to us a little bit about that then. So how does it help our running? Because for a long time we've been taught that running is strength training is great for like injury prevention, but I don't think we talk enough about how it actually contributes to, you know, improvements in our actual running. So just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I include plyometrics in my strength training as well because I think it's something that's massively overlooked in runners. But basically, when we're looking to do plyometrics, for example, we're looking to improve our ankle stiffness. And when we do a plyometric movement, it's the stretch shortening cycle. So I always use the analogy of a spring and your ankle stiffness being like a spring. And if your spring has no spring in it, it's quite loose and it doesn't give you that rebound. Whereas if you are doing plyometric movements, for example, and you improve your ankle stiffness by doing these types of exercises like jump lunges, jump squats, skaters, pogo hops, you're improving the spring and the force production that you're getting. And when you think about running, all running is a series of plyometric movements. So as a result of plyometrics, there's basically three things we're getting. We're getting increased ankle stiffness, we're getting increased force production, and we're getting a reduction in ground contact time. And those three combined are really essential if you're looking to make improvements in your running.
Yeah, okay. So if somebody's never incorporated plyometrics into their strength training routine before, how are we best in introducing that? Because they must be quite hard work to do when you're new to them.
Yeah, but there's always a way to simplify and regress exercises.
Okay.
And it's important to remember, essentially, when we are running, we are already doing plyometrics. So there is always a form. But skipping is a really good example of a plyometric that most of us can do. If we can skip with a rope, we can do it. And, you know, there was a really interesting study where they looked at the impact of skipping on time trials of 5 kilometers or 10 kilometers, and it actually improved performance. So there's background behind this as well, and evidence suggests that this does work. Some of the hard movements like jump lunges are often hard because we don't quite have the stability to be able to do them, and it does take a little bit of time to start to practice these. But starting with exercises like pogo hops, single leg jumps, just literally hopping on the spot, or laying down a towel and hopping side to side as a progression from there, that's still a plyometric movement, and it's still looking to reduce our ground contact time.
Yeah, and that's going to help you running. So would you do that as part of a strength session, or would that be something you could incorporate into a warm-up or something, for example?
Both. I mean, I like to do it as a bit of a warm-up for my strength sessions and before my runs. Actually, if I'm doing a run from home on a treadmill, I often do them before runs on the treadmill too. But I do them at the beginning of a workout when I'm less tired and less fatigued from strength training, so I can be quite fresh to work on that spring. And again, just 2 exercises, you know, twice a week. That's 4 plyometric exercises you're doing across the week. And if you can add some into your warm-up, amazing. But it's almost like you're just microdosing these plyometric movements across your week to compound over time and create improvement in your running.
Yeah. And how long would it generally take then? Say if we introduce plyometrics regularly into our routine, when would you start to see an improvement, do you think?
It's really difficult to say because quite often when you do plyometrics, you're also doing strength training and you're also running. So it's quite hard in these situations to look at exact timescales. But from memory, the just skipping was an 8-week program where they looked at skipping and improving time trials. So that was an 8-week
Yeah.
progression of just skipping.
That's a short time, really, isn't it? Yeah.
Really short, yeah. So I think that's really encouraging for a lot of people who are new to it.
Yeah.
And what's great about plyometrics is you do actually feel the difference as well. You can feel when things become starting to become more comfortable. But I would just say, look, start with some single leg hops twice a week, see how that feels, and work laterally as well. Because a lot of time with runners, it's always front to back. But for
Yeah.
intervention, I think it's really important to work laterally as well,
So
especially.
why is that important, James? What's the benefit of that lateral movement?
Well, when you think about running, most of the time it is quite straight, but there are still some movements that we do, especially in races where you're kind of
Yeah.
weaving in and out of people, or you might be coming down a curb if you're on a road. And it's still important to train our body to be able to be strong in lateral movements as well as those frontals. So if you're someone that's doing a lot of trail running, you're probably doing this all the time because you're consistently dodging things on your runs out in the trails. But for some reason, typical road runners sometimes overlook that. And in strength training programs, I'll always factor in lateral movements like side squats or Cossack squats, because I still think it's important to build those components of fitness in all body parts and across all planes of movement.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So there you go. So you've got loads of videos, haven't you, online?
Too many, I
Yeah.
think. Instagram. But I tend to follow the same process with what I share, and that is always about how can we build strength when we're time restricted and we're trying to manage a week of running. And I guess this also ties quite nicely into, well, how do you actually put strength training sessions into a week where you're trying to run 2 to 3 times as well?
Yeah, well, that was actually going to be my next question. So, how does that work? Because we're quite time poor. If people work full time, got families, got other commitments, how do we fit? Running's always going to be our priority, right, as runners. So, how do we fit that strength training in so that it's not kind of adversely affecting our running and making it kind of fatiguing us too much?
Well, I always use this analogy when I try and explain how to balance a week as a pot, and you're adding stress to that pot.
Yeah.
There are certain sessions, running sessions, that we do in the week that are more high stress. So, for example, if you're doing speed intervals, they are higher stress, but they also get a larger adaptation. So they're high stress, but big adaptation, whereas your easy runs are lower stress, but also a lower adaptation. So what I always try and say is you're managing that pot by adding stress, but making sure it doesn't overspill, because the overspill tends to lead to injury. So when you look at a week as a whole, the typical person might do 2 to 3 runs and 2 strength workouts. So the most important consideration to make when you look at your week is to ensure that you don't do something like speed work after heavy leg work, because you're simply not going to get the power or the output from your body that you need for that session. So I always like to start the week with speed on a Monday.
Yeah.
Get that one done and out the way. And then Tuesday, I can do some strength work or have a rest day, whatever it might be. But that's a really nice format then, because you're getting all the bang for your buck from your speed, but you're not compromising your run. And that's really important.
Yeah.
Then looking at the other sessions across your week, your long run and your other strength session, and possibly an easy run if you're running 3 times a week, or you've then got the whole week to kind of factor that in. And most people tend to do their long runs on the weekend because they have more time. So that means you're just trying to factor that last strength session on a Thursday or a Friday to give yourself, again, time to recover before you start adding that mileage in your long run. You can do strength sessions and runs on the same day, and some people even do them in the same session. So they'll go from doing a run into their strength.
Yeah.
And this is where, again, it kind of shifts a little bit, because a lot of the time we see online, you should always do your cardio after your strength. But if you're a runner, your priority is to improve your running, and it makes sense then to do your strength session after it.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. So say for example, because for example, I'll normally do my speed I'll have like an easy run Monday. I'll do speed on a Tuesday. I tend to have a day off Wednesday, and then or I might do a short, easy run, and then I'll do my long run on Friday because I take weekends off. So where would I kind of fit? I'm just thinking where I would fit strength in there, possibly on the Wednesday, right? On my rest day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or after an easy run.
Yeah.
Most people tend to have a couple of days free, and it's just, even though we don't want to be working out all the time, trying to do 20 minutes
Yeah.
twice a week seems a lot more manageable, and especially when you can do it from home, I think it's realistic. And I don't know where the gold standard of 60-minute strength training ever came from, but it really isn't needed. And when we're not trying to be a bodybuilder or a power lifter, we're just trying to build total body strength specific to running. I think 20 to 30 minutes as a minimum is quite realistic for a lot of people.
Yeah, that's really reassuring to hear, actually. As somebody who will avoid strength training because it feels like there's a difficult barrier to get to actually do it. But I loved what you said earlier about just write it down what you're doing, know your weights, and then you can just go and pick them up, can't you?
Yeah, and I guess it's almost a bit of accountability, right? It's giving yourself something to follow. And again, if you're time restricted, I always come back to this because runners generally are time restricted. Writing it down will make your session more efficient because you're not spending 10 minutes out of half an hour thinking, what do I do now? What weight am I supposed to lift here? What do I go and do as my next exercise? You just got a plan, you follow it, and it's super efficient and it saves time.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant advice. Yeah, thank you. So let's talk about half marathons then specifically, because this isn't something we've ever really gone into in great detail on the podcast, because I think ultra running's booming. We've had loads of ultra running on, we've had loads of tips for that, but half marathon it's an achievable distance for kind of most people, right? Isn't it? It's
So.
not going to take up too much of your time. I think we were saying
I
earlier.
think it's really achievable for everyone. And it's what I love about the half marathon distance is you don't have to spend your whole weekend out on long runs. And again, if you're a busy parent or you're busy with work, it's very easy to be able to put your runs into your week without taking over your life. I've done marathons before, and it's an amazing achievement. But I found it really hard to train for those, and now I can kind of get through half marathon training. It doesn't feel overwhelming.
Yeah,
it feels like it slots into my week rather than taking over it, to be honest.
Yeah. What's your running background out of interest before we get deep into half marathon tips? How did you get into running specifically?
I took part in the London Marathon in 2018. From memory, it was 2018, and it was the hottest marathon on record in London. And my training was an absolute disaster. I kind of winged it. I was guessing my long runs, guessing my pacing. It wasn't as accessible to get the information as it is now.
Right.
And I really struggled with it. It was really tough. Amazing to finish it, but really tough. After that, I did a whole load of half marathons. Again, kind of winged it, but really enjoyed it. And then over the last couple of years, I thought, you know what, I'm a PT. I work with people who are interested in running. I need to upskill.
Yeah.
So I took part I got a run coach qualification. It just completely changed my outlook on running. And it made me realize that actually it's a system and a structure, just like strength training to achieve a body transformation goal. It's just a different system that you need to follow. But I don't think there was enough advice out there for beginners or for people maybe doing their second half marathon that want a little bit more structure on how to do it. And I really wanted to simplify that. And the core groups I work with are people that are either new to their half marathons or running their second one and want to make an improvement.
Yeah.
So it kind of really encouraged me and spurred me on. And then for the last few years, I've just really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I know, that's great. So what did you learn personally then from going through that qualification process for your own running?
The difference in strength training was a real shift to me. Like I said at the beginning,
Yeah.
I've always been following, a bodybuilding style, and something kind of switched and made me realize that as we get older, I think there are far more areas of our body we should be using, like our mobility, like being able to jump, like being able to run, sprint, whatever it might be, that I was not doing. And I felt like I wasn't getting the most or giving my body the most opportunity to perform at its best. So my training has changed massively since doing that qualification, and I can structure my own week far more efficiently now because I know what I'm doing, and it's helped me so much in my half marathons because I write my own plans, and I get through them really comfortably and I enjoy them, and I always think that's the most important part, to enjoy it. For me, the most important part is to enjoy them.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely key, isn't it? So why is the half marathon then such a challenging distance? I find it a difficult one personally.
Yeah, I think it's because there is this urge to go really fast. And a lot of people, especially beginners, when you're still on that start line, you have the apprehension and the anxiety of doing your first race, and you just get caught up on everyone else's pacing. So I think there is this urge to think of half marathon as this kind of hybrid of like, how fast do you need to go in this race? So it's really tough from that perspective. And I know a lot of people, they do go out way too fast rather than taking a little bit more of a reserved approach to the full race. Again, I've done it myself, and it's a nasty experience when you get to kind of 16 kilometers and you've got to get through that last five, and you're feeling like it's really tough. So I think that the reason it is so tough is just not having a clear approach and strategy to actually execute it.
Yeah. So yes, and pacing on the day. I think you get carried away with the crowd at the start as well sometimes, don't you, in a race?
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's always you look at your watch, you've been going far faster than the pace you should be. But again, this is why I think having a coach or having a plan is really important, because when you look at your training schedule, I always like my clients to be able to know exactly how their pace should feel. So even if their watch goes down, they've got no GPS during a half marathon, they can go off RPE, so they can go off their rate of exertion to know this actually is my comfortable pace to work within. When I'm coaching runners for a half marathon, a lot of runners will come with a goal time, but I always try and flip that and say, look, the aim should always be to get as fit as you can and as strong as you can, then you're always going to perform your best. But around the kind of midway point of their prep, when you go into a kind of a build phase of that preparation, then you can start to think around pacing. How fit is the client now? What improvements have we made? What's a realistic goal? And then start to weave in some of that race pacing into that strategy and that training plan.
Yeah. And what will you be looking at in terms of kind of past data to help you set a sensible goal for people then?
So I actually do a test with my clients periodically throughout their training plan. So the first thing I do is a time trial. So I'll either do a 20-minute time trial or a 5 kilometer time trial, and I'll base their initial pacing phase off that. And then throughout their 12, 16-week plan, I'll have milestones of races. So maybe a 10K race they work within, or another time trial. And then I'll take that data and then refresh their pacing. So you get a really good idea of roughly where they're sitting and what's realistic. And, if they do have a goal in mind, I think it's really important, to be honest, to say, yeah, you're on track for that. Or actually, it's great to have that goal, but maybe that's the next one you do, and kind of just bring a sense of realism and perspective to that training too. There's nothing worse than when you
it
get
can be tricky. Yeah, it can be tricky to set a goal, I think, because quite often you'll set a goal based on what you think is a good half marathon time, and it's not necessarily what you're capable of right
100%.
now.
And in a world where running is now booming, it's all we see is these incredible times being set by people, and sometimes I think it gives a bit of an unrealistic expectation of what is a really great time in a marathon or a half marathon.
Yeah, I think you posted a really interesting video that I was watching earlier that said, what's an average half marathon time? And you said something like, there's no average half marathon runner, because not many of us actually go and do a half marathon.
No, it's in single digit percentages of the worldwide population of people that actually do it. So just completing a half marathon, I think, is an absolutely huge achievement for everyone. And that again is why I love coaching beginner runners, because I find it so rewarding to get that finish line photo and see that finish line photo with their medal, and it's smiles, and that the first one's really important. I think it's, if you can have a really enjoyable experience of the first half marathon, I think you get the bug.
Yeah,
and I've had that bug through the SuperHalfs with Real Buzz. It's I've finished one, I've wanted to the next, and it's just kind of consistently gone on for the past year.
Yeah, it's an amazing feeling. I remember my first one actually, and I don't think you ever forget it, because you feel like it's just the most amazing achievement, don't you?
Yeah, and again, I think that's why when you look at your training and you complete your training, I think it's really good just to know when you're on that start line that you you have a plan of what you're going to do, and you're confident, or as confident as you can be. You're always going to be a bit nervous, but you're as confident as you can be in knowing I've done all I can. I know I'm fit enough. Now it's my time to go and do it.
Yeah. So people listening to this podcast hoping for some kind of tips and advice on how to approach half marathon training. So what advice would you give for kind of, like, I mean, how long do you give yourself to train properly?
I think it depends really on the start point of the individual. So again, when I build a training plan, I'll break the training plan down into 3 different phases. So start with a base phase where we build base aerobic fitness. The second phase is more build, so it's a little bit more race specific. Start integrating some of those race pace strategies, and then the peak is around your race, and this is the period where you want to feel your fittest and strongest going into that race, because you can't sustain peak fitness for the whole year. So it's about being strategic with that and making sure that at that phase you feel really good, and that's when your race is. And then it's just about making sure you're ticking the boxes from a recovery, training, strength perspective, and fueling perspective to go and deliver your best run. A lot of people who do half marathons that I've coached with have actually come from a background of not even doing 5K. So when you're at that level, it's more follow a run walk strategy until you can build up to a 5K distance, and then you can start to work on some slightly bigger runs or slightly longer runs, and go into a base again of training for a half marathon. But I think it's patience. I think it's giving yourself enough time so you don't feel against the clock to deliver. And again, enjoying it, because you're doing something amazing. You're working on your fitness, your strength, everything to be able to run this distance. And I think it's really important to run and enjoy the whole cycle of doing it.
Yeah. So say it's your first half marathon, would you be recommending like three runs a week for people?
2 to 3 is what I typically say if you're running your first. And a lot of the time, people tend to think that they need to run the full distance of a half marathon to do it. But I think for beginners or people doing their first half marathon, hitting anywhere around 16, 17 kilometers as your long run is perfectly doable. There's kind of diminishing returns from that point onwards, and the risk of injury goes up. So if you can hit 16, 17 kilometers, you're going to get through your half marathon. And I think that's where a lot of people fall short, is they tend to be doing either their long runs too fast, or they're just simply running way too long than they need to be doing. If you look at our bodies, basically our cardiovascular fitness develops much faster than our musculoskeletal. So we might be able to run the distance, but it doesn't necessarily mean that our muscles, tendons, connective tissues can actually adapt and respond to what we're expecting them to do. And it's why people do get injured when they're trying to run too far too soon.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. So people need to build up really, really gradually and do that strength training, of course, which will help, won't it?
Yeah. And there is this kind of 10% number that's thrown about where you're not increasing your weekly mileage by much more than 10%, which does need to be taken a little bit loosely. But I think it's a good base for beginners to work within, to make sure that they are giving themselves enough time. And if you take your distance for your half marathon and work backwards, you can roughly work out to where you are now and how long it's going to take you in terms of weeks to build up to that distance.
Yeah. So say if you're then going back to the half marathon distance, because I think the first one's quite nice, actually, because you've no kind of pressure of having to run a certain time, have you?
No.
But I think when you go back to the half marathon distance for the second time, you always want to kind of do better, don't you? So how would you approach that kind of training cycle differently?
Well, you kind of set a baseline for yourself then, so you know what you're kind of competing against, which is great because you're competing against yourself then, not someone else. So I think that's really nice. But I think a more advanced program for half marathon training would be looking at to play around with sessions like the long runs a little bit more. What the typical flow of people I would say 90% of people that run a half marathon is that they fatigue in the back end of it. So with your long runs, you can get a little bit more creative to train your body to be able to cope with that fatigue. So for example, sessions such as 10 kilometers with 5 kilometers at 10K pace or whatever it might be, a session that's basically integrating speed in the back end of your long run can be really nice. But I tend to save those sessions for clients and I'm working with that are a little bit more advanced, because I like to keep things super simple for beginner runners.
Yeah, I mean, would you be putting kind of any kind of speed work in for beginner runners?
Yeah, definitely. But again, I have it on that separate day, so that what I like for my clients to do is to know the purpose behind each session. So when they're doing their speed, they know the intention is speed. When they do the long run, they know it's about restricting the pace a little bit and working in that zone 2 area. So it's very clear and simple for them. And it's like almost like if you're asking yourself the why behind each session, before you go into it. Most people do tend to run their long runs too fast. And when you actually work with them around pacing from doing those tests, like a time trial, to get the right pacing, it's a bit of an eye opener to how fast they have been running those long runs. But absolutely, I 100% do speed work, and sessions like 400-meter intervals with 90 seconds, 2 minutes of recovery, I think are really great sessions for everyone, but especially for beginners.
Yeah, really accessible for beginners as well. So you mentioned doing your long runs too fast. How do you know it's too fast, and how do you know what's a good pace for you, and why is it important?
Yeah, so the first one is thinking about it in terms of RPE, so that rate of perceived exertion. Trying to keep it at a conversational pace is probably the easiest. So can you hold a conversation, yes or no? If you can, good chance you'll work in that range. I also implemented a really different way of working on my long runs, and that's through nasal breathing.
Oh, yes.
It's been very different, very hard to do. I definitely don't recommend it for just going straight into it, because it does take a little bit of a time to build up into it. But nasal breathing is essentially only breathing through your nose. So you inhale through the nose, you exhale through the nose, and it does slow down your breathing rate, but you won't be able to maintain higher intensities over kind of 85% of your effort via nasal breathing. So it kind of is a tool to restrict you from pushing that intensity too much. So I tend to do all of my long runs nasal breathing only.
That's a really good tip, actually. We do have a podcast on that with the breath running coach, if anybody's not heard of that. So yeah, we go into that a bit deeper, but that's a really good tip for doing your long runs, actually. It's tricky to do though, isn't it? I've been trying it. It's hard.
Really tough. I mean, as a baseline again for doing that, even just nasal breathing when you're fast walking can feel quite tough. So it does take time to build that tolerance, because it's all around your carbon dioxide tolerance, which I'm sure is included in the podcast.
Yeah.
And oxygen, carbohydrates is very complex if you want to learn the science behind it. But as a tool, I just think it's a really nice way to restrict intensity.
Yeah. And it's important to do that, of course, because we don't want to tire ourselves out too much, do we?
Absolutely. But even just asking yourself, out of 10, what does this intensity feel like? If 9, 10 is really going flat out, and it should sit somewhere around a 3, 4 out of 10 effort.
Yeah, I think we do generally as runners try and go too quickly on all of our runs, don't we? I don't know why that is. Is that, I don't know.
I don't know. I think maybe it's just impatience to get it done. But again, it comes back to that analogy I used around the managing stress. And if your speed work is the one that builds the most stress, you don't want to be layering more into it throughout your week. And that session is not about that. And that's not the purpose and the intent behind that long run. It's just about building mileage and time under the feet, really.
Yeah, and getting your muscles and tendons used to it. Yeah. So just we touched on rest and recovery there then. So how do you build rest and recovery into a week, and what's most important?
I think the weekly structure is the most important, because it does mean that you're not trying to perform when your body's not recovered from the previous session. So again, just managing your hard runs with your strength training and giving yourself the right pace to run at is in itself the best way of managing the intensity across the week. Fueling is also really important, making sure that you are well fueled. A lot of people don't use gels on their long runs. So I think it's really important to make sure that if you are doing, over 60, 90 minutes of exercise, of cardio, then you should be fueling with gels to be able to give yourself that resource, because otherwise you're simply running on empty. And sometimes I think we get in the mindset of gels are for race day only, when they can quite easily be implemented into your long runs. And it gives you a nice prep anyway to be able to test which gels work best for you with your gut and which ones you enjoy. And then you don't have to worry about it or think about it on race day too. So I think fueling, giving yourself enough rest generally and sleep and managing your week, that's kind of the pinnacle of recovery for me.
Yeah, sleep is something I don't think we give enough value to as a society. Really, I think we tend to underestimate its importance, but it does have a place
Yeah.
in.
And also, we're really lucky these days that we have so many metrics at hand to be able to tell us if we are overreaching and pushing too much. You know, your HRV, your resting heart rate. Resting heart rate is such a good measure of how your body is responding to that stress. And yes, there is going to be a natural lift from any session that creates high stress. But I think if the general trend is upwards, then perhaps it's time to look at your week and scale some things back, or give yourself more recovery so that your body can actually adapt.
Yeah.
The other thing I try to do is incorporate deload weeks into clients' training plans, which is, again, often massively overlooked. But if you add a week where you scale back on your mileage or your intensity, you're giving your body a chance to adapt and absorb all the training it's done in the previous 2 to 3 weeks. And you go into the following week feeling better. And it's kind of like a chart of progression. It goes up, it stabilizes or goes down a little bit, then it goes up again. And we're never going to get linear progress across the whole training plan.
No, and I don't think we necessarily want it either, do we? Because like we were saying right at the start, we want to be peaking at that race day.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
It's there's so much complexity to building a good training plan that I think it's often overlooked. But this is why it's great to have all these apps and coaches that can provide the resources, and give you the information that is needed to be able to run and perform at your best.
yeah. It feels like there's just such a lot of information out there, though, doesn't it? So what are your kind of, let's say, top 3 tips then for running a good half marathon?
Okay, it's a great question. The first one is to manage your week. I've spoken a lot about that, but plan your week and plan it well, and think about those sessions and the stress. That would be my number one tip, because I think a lot tends to fall into place from recovery and performance when you do that. The second one would be to strength train, not for an hour, not for 90 minutes. Just strength train and keep things simple and work the key areas of your body that are relevant to running. So 6 exercises, 2 to 3 sets. Take the last one to failure and do that twice a week minimum. I think that's a solid introduction to that. And then I think the third one would be just to have a plan, and actually, execute it.
Yeah.
To work back from your target race day, work back to where you're at now, and build slow and steady progressions that are kind to your body, but also allow you to progress.
Yeah, I like that. So starting where you are now, not where you hope to be, really.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing worse than when you're on social media or something like that and you see someone's gone to run a half marathon or a marathon as fast as they can just because they feel like they want to. And I'm always like, please don't do that. It's just, it's just a not sensible thing to do. And it, more often than not, you see the same people getting injured. So it is just a case of just be sensible and follow a plan that is kind.
Yeah. I know that's great advice. Thank you very much. It's been really great to chat to you today. So what are have you been kind of going through your super halves, aiming for times, or are you just having fun?
No, they've all been very different actually. Um I've trained for them all with the goal of just getting through and enjoying it this time.
Yeah.
And I one of the guys I work with, who's shoots my videos for social media, I've roped him into running some of them with me. So it's been really nice to train him for them. And he had the goal of this of hitting under 2 hours. And the first time he got 2 hours and one, so he was a bit gutted about that. And then we ran Prague, and he got the sub 2, so he was over the moon. So yeah, like I say, I said at the very start, my satisfaction from running now is seeing just people run their first, their second, their third, and see improvement. And even when I run myself, that's what I like to see.
Yeah. Oh no, that's so lovely. And you're of course running all these for charity, aren't you? So just tell us a little bit about your charity as well.
Yeah, so it's for Make a Wish, which is obviously a UK charity providing opportunities for children. And yeah, it's been amazing to run for that and keep that in mind during the races as well. And it kind of definitely gives you a much bigger perspective of everything in life that we're doing. So it's been amazing, and doing that with Real Buzz has been great for the support as well. And yeah, it's the last one in Wales in October. So if anyone is running Cardiff in October, hope to see you there. And yeah, then I'll get my gold medal, my big gold medal that you get for competing in the last 6, and I'll be sharing that across social media as well.
Yeah, oh, that's brilliant. Oh, well, thank you so much, James. It's been great chatting to you today, and I've certainly learned something. So I need to get on with some strength training, I think.
That's it. Well, I said 20 to 30 minutes twice a week. You've got it.
Yeah, right. I'll be having a look at your videos. So thank you. If you'd like to follow James's journey, we'll put all the links in our show notes. And as always, we'd love to hear what you're up to at the moment. So do tag us on social media. And thank you for listening. We will see you next time on the UK Run Chat podcast.